Alex Rivera sat alone in his grandfather's house, staring at the wilted rainbow garden through the kitchen window. The vibrant flowers Samuel had helped him plant were dying, just like everything else in his life since Marcus walked out 6 months ago. The silence felt heavier than usual that Tuesday evening. His live stream coding tutorial had barely reached 50 viewers, down from the thousands who used to tune in when he actually had energy to teach. Depression clung to him like Austin's humid summer air, making even the simplest tasks feel impossible. Then came the knock that would change everything. Ryan stood at the front door with dark circles under his eyes and defeat written across his face. Behind him, Jessica clutched a designer purse while scanning the neighborhood's rising property values with the calculating gaze of a real estate agent. Their kids, Mason and his younger sister, dragged suitcases that scraped against the vintage hardwood floors Samuel had lovingly restored decades ago. The foreclosure notice had come without warning. Ryan's discrimination lawsuit against his previous employer had drained their savings, and Jessica's real estate commissions couldn't cover the mortgage on their suburban McMansion. They needed a place to stay, and Alex's inherited townhouse in East Austin's rapidly gentrifying core was their only option. Alex felt a familiar tightness in his chest as his carefully constructed sanctuary began to shift. This house wasn't just property to him. It was the place where Samuel had held him while he cried after coming out to their parents at 22, where chosen family had gathered for pride celebrations and support group meetings, where he'd built his online coding career and tried to heal from Marcus's betrayal. Jessica wasted no time assessing the space with professional efficiency. She commented on the wasted square footage, the impractical layout for a growing family, and the outdated fixtures that could use modernizing. Her voice carried the artificial sweetness of someone accustomed to getting what she wanted through manipulation rather than honest conversation. Within hours, Alex's home office transformed into a children's bedroom. His professional live stream setup, carefully arranged lighting, and ergonomic workspace disappeared behind bunk beds and toy chests. The room where he'd built his career and connected with LGBTQ youth across the country became off-limits, forcing him to work from the living room couch with his laptop balanced precariously on his knees. Mason noticed the tension immediately. At 12, he possessed an emotional intelligence that often surprised adults. He watched his uncle's shoulders slump as each familiar space got reassigned to family use. The kid had always been drawn to Alex's tech setup and gentle teaching style, sensing a kindness in his uncle that contrasted sharply with his parents' constant stress and criticism. The rainbow garden became Jessica's first casualty. While claiming to help with yard maintenance, she overwatered the delicate flowers Samuel and Alex had cultivated together. The blooms that had survived Texas heat waves and winter freezes couldn't withstand her aggressive care. Alex watched from his bedroom window as petals scattered across the lawn like confetti from a celebration that had ended too soon. Sleep became elusive as the house filled with unfamiliar sounds and energy. Alex lay awake listening to Jessica's late-night phone calls about property values and refinancing options. Her voice carried through the thin walls as she researched the neighborhood's rapid appreciation and discussed investment opportunities with colleagues. The words felt like tiny knives, each one cutting away another piece of his security. Ryan tried to bridge the growing tension with awkward small talk about work and family obligations, but his guilt over abandoning Alex during the coming-out crisis years earlier created an uncomfortable undercurrent in every conversation. He wanted to reconnect with his younger brother while simultaneously feeling entitled to the help he'd never offered in return. The depression that had been manageable when Alex lived alone intensified under constant observation and judgment. Simple tasks like showering or preparing meals became performances evaluated by family members who seemed to catalog every sign of instability or weakness. His live stream content suffered as background noise and interruptions made professional recording impossible. Marcus's absence felt more acute, surrounded by nuclear family dynamics. Alex remembered their plans to host pride gatherings and community events in this very space. The dreams they'd shared about creating a welcoming home for other LGBTQ people seemed naive now, replaced by the harsh reality of family members who viewed his identity as a phase rather than a fundamental part of who he was. But in the midst of this invasion, something unexpected began to emerge. Mason started lingering near Alex's makeshift workspace, asking questions about coding and online communities. The kid's genuine curiosity and lack of judgment offered a small beacon of hope in an increasingly dark situation. The lesson hidden in Alex's early struggle reminds us that our homes are more than physical structures. They're repositories of memory, identity, and belonging that can't be easily replaced or replicated. When that sanctuary gets threatened, we discover reserves of strength we never knew we possessed, often through the most unlikely allies who see our true worth when others only see inconvenience. Welcome to Heart Stories, where we explore the battles people fight for home, family, and the right to exist authentically. Alex's journey is just beginning, and what happens next will test everything he believes about family, love, and the courage to stand up for what's rightfully his. Subscribe now because this story gets much more intense, and you won't want to miss how far Jessica is willing to go to get what she wants. Jessica's transformation from temporary guest to permanent fixture happened with surgical precision. By the second week, she had scheduled what she called a family financial planning meeting, the dining room table, where Jessica's transformation from temporary guest to permanent fixture happened with surgical precision. By the second week, she had scheduled what she called a family financial planning meeting. The dining room table, where Alex had shared countless meals with Samuel, became her war room covered with property assessments, refinancing documents, and calculator printouts. The numbers painted a compelling picture. The townhouse had appreciated dramatically in Austin's white-hot real estate market, now worth close to $800,000 in a neighborhood where tech workers and young professionals competed for every available property. Jessica presented her research with the confidence of someone who had orchestrated similar conversations with desperate clients facing foreclosure. Her proposal sounded reasonable on the surface. Both brothers would refinance the house together, splitting the mortgage payments and maintenance costs. Ryan would handle yard work and repairs while Jessica managed the financial logistics. Alex would contribute his portion while gaining the security of shared responsibility and family support during his difficult period. But Alex recognized the trap hidden beneath her reasonable tone. Refinancing would put Ryan's name on the deed, transforming him from a temporary guest into a permanent co-owner. The house Samuel had left specifically to Alex. Understanding his grandson's vulnerability as a gay man in an often hostile world would become another piece of property to be divided, sold, or leveraged for someone else's benefit. Ryan's enthusiasm for the plan felt like betrayal wrapped in brotherly concern. He spoke about building generational wealth and smart financial planning, but his eyes held the desperation of someone who had lost everything once and couldn't bear the thought of homelessness again. The discrimination lawsuit that had cost him his previous job had also shattered his confidence in his ability to provide for his family independently. Jessica escalated her control tactics with calculated precision. She rearranged the living spaces under the guise of creating better flow for family activities. Pride flags and LGBTQ artwork disappeared into storage, replaced by generic family photos and neutral decor that wouldn't offend potential buyers during future showings. The house began to feel like a staged property rather than a home. The utilities conversation revealed Jessica's long-term strategy. She produced detailed calculations showing how Alex's single-person usage patterns were unfair now that a family shared the space. Water bills, electricity costs, and internet charges needed to be redistributed based on actual consumption and family size. Alex found himself paying premium rates for utilities in his own inherited house. Mason became an unwitting witness to his parents' manipulation tactics. The boy watched his uncle retreat further into isolation as each family meeting stripped away another layer of Alex's autonomy. During quiet moments when his parents assumed he was occupied with video games, Mason researched property law and inheritance rights on his tablet, disturbed by the growing tension in their temporary home. The boy's curiosity about Alex's work opened unexpected conversations about technology, creativity, and identity. While Jessica and Ryan focused on financial logistics, Mason discovered his uncle's volunteer work with Out Youth, learning about LGBTQ history and rights through Alex's community connections. The kid's questions about discrimination and fairness revealed an emotional intelligence that often surprised the adults around him. Alex's depression deepened as his professional life continued deteriorating. Remote work clients began expressing concerns about his inconsistent availability and declining video quality. The background noise from family activities made professional calls impossible, and his cramped workspace on the living room couch created chronic back pain that affected his focus and productivity. Sleep deprivation became a constant companion as Jessica's late-night phone calls penetrated the thin walls between bedrooms. Her conversations with real estate colleagues about market trends and investment opportunities felt like psychological warfare designed to remind Alex of his property's value and her expertise in maximizing returns. The house that had once felt like a sanctuary now felt like a pressure cooker ready to explode. Jessica's comments about Alex's single lifestyle grew more pointed as weeks passed. She questioned why someone without children needed so much space, suggesting that family-oriented housing arrangements made more economic and social sense. Her observations about his dating life carried subtle implications that his relationships were less stable and meaningful than traditional marriages. But Mason's growing awareness of the situation began to shift the household dynamics in unexpected ways. The boy started spending more time with Alex, asking questions about coding and quietly observing the family meetings where his parents made decisions about their uncle's future without including him in the conversation. This manipulation reveals how financial abuse often hides behind concern and family loyalty. When someone's vulnerability becomes a weapon used against them, the resulting trauma can be as devastating as physical violence. The most effective predators understand that emotional manipulation leaves fewer visible scars while achieving the same goal of total control over their victims' choices and resources. The breaking point came when Alex discovered Samuel's suicide note draft, hidden in his grandfather's old desk drawer. The yellowed paper, dated just months before Samuel's death from COVID, revealed his deepest fear that the family would destroy everything he had built for Alex after he was gone. The trembling handwriting spoke of a legacy meant to protect his gay grandson in a world that often showed no mercy to those who dared to live authentically. That night, Alex sat in the decimated rainbow garden holding the note, finally understanding the true weight of what Jessica was trying to steal. This wasn't just about property values or family arrangements. Samuel had created a sanctuary specifically for LGBTQ people who needed a safe space to exist, to heal, to build community. The house had hosted chosen family gatherings, pride celebrations, and support groups for young people rejected by their biological families. Mason found his uncle there at dawn, tears streaming down Alex's face as he clutched the faded paper. The boy had been documenting his parents' behavior for weeks, troubled by the growing tension and his uncle's obvious distress. When Alex shared Samuel's words, Mason's young mind grasped the injustice with startling clarity. His parents weren't just taking a house, they were erasing a legacy of love and acceptance. The kid became Alex's secret ally, using his tech skills to document Jessica's property research and manipulation tactics. Mason discovered his mother's browser history filled with adverse possession laws, property flipping strategies, and real estate investment forums. Screenshots and recordings accumulated on his tablet as evidence of a calculated campaign to steal Alex's inheritance through legal loopholes and emotional manipulation. Jordan Kim arrived at Alex's request on a rainy Thursday afternoon, bringing both legal expertise and the warmth of old friendship. The Korean-American attorney had been Alex's roommate in college, witnessing his coming-out journey and understanding the profound significance of Samuel's support during those difficult years. Jordan's involvement with the Austin LGBTQ Housing Coalition added crucial context about housing discrimination and community protection strategies. The legal consultation revealed the sophistication of Jessica's strategy. Her adverse possession research showed she understood Texas property law well enough to claim ownership rights after residing in the house for an extended period. The utilities payments and home improvements she had documented could support her argument that she had assumed ownership responsibilities while Alex remained merely a tenant in his own inherited property. But Jordan's expertise in LGBTQ housing rights provided powerful counterarguments. Samuel's will contained specific language about the property's intended use as community space. and Alex's documented volunteer work with Out Youth demonstrated his commitment to continuing that legacy. The house's history of hosting support groups and pride events established its importance beyond personal residence. Carlos Mendoza entered Alex's life through the Austin LGBTQ Housing Coalition, initially as a policy advocate and gradually as something more personal. The Latino City Councilman's focus on affordable housing and anti-discrimination protections aligned perfectly with Alex's growing need for community support and legal protection. Their connection began professionally, but deepened as Carlos witnessed Alex's courage in fighting for his grandfather's legacy. Miss Patricia, the retired Black teacher who lived next door, emerged as an unexpected ally carrying decades of neighborhood history. She had been Samuel's close friend and confidant, understanding the significance of the Rainbow Garden and the community gatherings that had flourished in Alex's backyard. Her testimony about Samuel's intentions and the property's community importance would prove invaluable in any legal proceedings. The documentation process became therapeutic for Alex as he rediscovered his grandfather's true impact on the local LGBTQ community. Photo albums revealed pride celebrations, support group meetings, and chosen family gatherings that had transformed the house into a beacon of hope for isolated young people. Samuel's legacy wasn't just about providing Alex with shelter, it was about creating lasting change in countless lives. Jessica's counterattacks intensified as she sensed Alex's growing resistance. Her comments about his dating life became more pointed and cruel, suggesting that his relationships lacked the stability and commitment that justified homeownership. She questioned his fitness as a role model for Mason, implying that his identity and lifestyle choices made him an inappropriate influence on impressionable children. The community mobilization began organically as Alex's live stream audience learned about his situation. Viewers who had benefited from his coding tutorials and LGBTQ advocacy started sharing his story across social media platforms. The GoFundMe campaign for legal fees exceeded expectations within days, demonstrating the power of chosen family and online community solidarity. Carlos's city connections provided crucial insights into local housing policies and tenant protection laws. His experience with housing discrimination cases revealed patterns of behavior that matched Jessica's tactics perfectly. The documentation Mason had gathered aligned with established legal precedents for family-based housing fraud and financial abuse. But the most powerful weapon in Alex's arsenal became the community itself. Out Youth's legal advocates, the Austin LGBTQ Housing Coalition's resources, and the growing social media campaign created pressure that Jessica hadn't anticipated. Her real estate reputation began suffering as word spread about her tactics against a vulnerable community member and decorated volunteer. The lesson emerging from Alex's awakening demonstrates how isolation makes us vulnerable to manipulation, while community connection provides both protection and strength. When we find our tribe, whether through shared identity, common values, or mutual support, we discover that individual battles become collective victories, and personal healing contributes to systemic change. Jessica's desperation reached dangerous levels when she realized Alex was building legal and community support against her takeover attempts. The false CPS report arrived on a Monday morning, claiming that Alex's influence on Mason was inappropriate and potentially harmful to the child's development. The accusations painted him as an unstable adult whose depression and lifestyle choices created an unsafe environment for a minor. The investigation began immediately, with a stern-faced caseworker arriving unannounced to inspect the living conditions and interview family members. Jessica played the concerned mother perfectly, expressing worry about her brother-in-law's mental health and his increasing isolation from reality. She presented Alex's depression episodes as evidence of instability while positioning herself as the responsible adult protecting vulnerable children. Mason's loyalty was tested under official questioning, but the 12-year-old surprised everyone with his articulate defense of his uncle. He described Alex's patient coding lessons, his volunteer work with LGBTQ youth, and the kindness he had shown during their family's crisis. The kid's emotional intelligence shone through as he explained how Alex had taught him about acceptance, empathy, and standing up for what was right. Simultaneously, Jessica launched her professional sabotage campaign against Alex's remote work clients. She contacted his biggest contract client with carefully crafted concerns about his reliability and mental stability, suggesting they might want to reconsider their partnership given his recent unprofessional behavior and declining work quality. The timing was calculated to coincide with the CPS investigation, creating maximum financial pressure. The emotional devastation hit Alex during a live stream tutorial when he suffered a major panic attack on camera. Thousands of viewers watched him hyperventilate and struggle to speak coherently about basic coding concepts. The vulnerability of his breakdown, broadcast live to his professional community, felt like the final destruction of everything he had built since Samuel's death. But the live stream panic attack triggered an unexpected response. Instead of abandoning him, Alex's online community rallied with unprecedented support. Comments flooded in with stories of similar struggles, offers of help, and expressions of solidarity that transformed his moment of greatest shame into a powerful demonstration of chosen family loyalty. The viral video became a symbol of mental health awareness rather than professional failure. Marcus chose that vulnerable moment to return, appearing at Alex's door with apologies and promises of reconciliation. The timing felt manipulative rather than romantic, as if Alex's visible desperation made him an easier target for renewed emotional manipulation. Marcus's 6-month absence had conveniently coincided with Alex's happiest and most stable period, only to return when crisis made Alex question his worth and lovability. Ryan's breaking point came during the CPS investigation when he realized how far Jessica's manipulation had escalated. The discrimination lawsuit that had cost him his previous job had been trauma enough, but watching his wife systematically destroy his brother's life triggered memories of his own powerlessness against institutional cruelty. His panic attack was massive and undeniable, requiring emergency medical intervention. The hospital emergency room forced a family reckoning that Jessica couldn't control or manipulate. Ryan's cardiac symptoms were stress-related but serious enough to require overnight observation. In those quiet hours beside his brother's hospital bed, Alex faced a choice between revenge and compassion that would define both their futures. The decision to stay revealed the depth of Alex's character and his commitment to family despite everything. Mason confronted his father during his hospital recovery, displaying a maturity that shocked the adults around him. The boy's research into property law and housing rights had educated him about his parents' tactics, and he refused to remain silent about their treatment of Alex. His threat to live with his uncle if his parents couldn't accept their mistakes forced Ryan to confront his own cowardice and complicity. The court hearing for Jessica's adverse possession claim became a community event as Alex's supporters filled the gallery. Out youth advocates, Austin LGBTQ Housing Coalition members, and even some of his live stream viewers traveled to witness the legal battle. Their presence transformed what Jessica had intended as a quiet property grab into a public referendum on housing discrimination and family manipulation. Jordan Kim's legal presentation methodically dismantled Jessica's claims while establishing Alex's rights and intentions. The evidence Mason had gathered proved premeditation and bad faith, while testimony from Miss Patricia and other neighbors established Samuel's true wishes for the property. The community impact statements demonstrated how the house's loss would damage Austin's LGBTQ support infrastructure. The CPS investigation concluded with a scathing report about Jessica's false accusations and manipulative behavior. The caseworker's final assessment praised Alex's community involvement and positive influence on Mason while recommending that Jessica receive counseling for her treatment of family members. The attempted character assassination backfired spectacularly, exposing her tactics to official scrutiny. Extended family members who had remained neutral during the initial crisis began choosing sides as Jessica's behavior became undeniably abusive. Ryan's parents, initially supportive of their daughter-in-law's practical approach to the housing situation, withdrew their endorsement when they learned about the false CPS report and professional sabotage campaign. The isolation Jessica had tried to impose on Alex began reflecting back on her instead. The revelation of Jessica's childhood foreclosure trauma added complexity to her motivations without excusing her actions. Her therapist's testimony explained how losing her family's home at age 8 had created deep-seated fears about housing security, driving her to extreme measures to avoid ever experiencing homelessness again. Understanding her trauma helped the family begin healing while maintaining appropriate boundaries. This phase of Alex's journey illustrates how crisis often reveals people's true character and priorities. When systems designed to protect vulnerable people get weaponized against them, community support becomes the difference between survival and destruction. The courage to choose compassion over revenge, even when facing deliberate cruelty, transforms personal healing into social progress that benefits everyone. The courtroom victory felt surreal as Judge Martinez dismissed Jessica's adverse possession claims with prejudice, citing overwhelming evidence of bad faith and manipulative behavior. The restraining order against further harassment provided legal protection, but the emotional healing would take much longer. Alex walked out of the courthouse surrounded by community members who had become chosen family through shared struggle and mutual support. The Samuel Rivera LGBTQ Housing Trust became reality within weeks of the legal victory. Jordan Kim's expertise in nonprofit law transformed Alex's inheritance into a protected legacy that could never again be threatened by family manipulation or market forces. The trust's bylaws ensured the property would serve Austin's LGBTQ community in perpetuity, honoring Samuel's vision while adapting to future needs. Jessica and Ryan's departure from the house required community support rather than vindictive celebration. Carlos's connections in city housing programs helped them find affordable temporary housing, while Jessica began intensive therapy to address her childhood trauma. The approach prioritized healing over punishment, demonstrating how restorative justice could break cycles of harm that affected entire families. Alex's depression began lifting as purpose replaced despair in his daily routine. The house renovation project became therapeutic, with volunteers from Out Youth and the Austin LGBTQ Housing Coalition contributing labor and expertise. Each room's transformation represented healing from different aspects of the trauma he had endured. While creating spaces designed for community gathering and mutual support, the Rainbow Gardens restoration required careful attention to the specific needs of plants that had suffered under Jessica's aggressive care. Miss Patricia shared Samuel's original planting notes, revealing how each flower variety had been chosen for resilience and symbolic meaning. The community planting day brought together neighbors, LGBTQ youth, and Alex's online followers for a celebration of renewal and growth. Mason's relationship with Alex deepened through their shared experience of standing up to family pressure and institutional challenges. The boys' research skills and emotional intelligence had been crucial to their victory, but more importantly, their partnership had taught him about advocacy, justice, and the courage required to protect vulnerable community members. His parents' therapy progress allowed him to maintain relationships with both sides of his family. The live stream career that had nearly been destroyed by Jessica's sabotage evolved into something more meaningful and sustainable. Alex's vulnerability during his on-camera panic attack had connected him with viewers struggling with similar mental health challenges. His content expanded beyond coding tutorials to include discussions about LGBTQ rights, housing justice, and community organizing that attracted new audiences. Carlos's presence in Alex's life grew from professional collaboration to genuine romantic partnership as they worked together on housing advocacy initiatives. Their relationship developed naturally through shared values and mutual respect, providing Alex with the kind of stable, supportive love he had never experienced with Marcus. The trust they built through crisis management created a foundation for long-term commitment. The annual Dia de los Muertos altar became a neighborhood tradition honoring Samuel's memory alongside other community members lost to AIDS, suicide, and anti-LGBTQ violence. The ceremony brought together multiple generations of activists and allies, creating intergenerational connections that strengthened the community's resilience and historical memory. Alex's grief transformed into celebration of his grandfather's lasting impact. Ryan's therapy progress enabled difficult but necessary conversations about his abandonment of Alex during the coming out crisis years earlier. The discrimination lawsuit that had cost Ryan his job helped him understand how institutional prejudice affected his brother's daily life, creating empathy that had been missing from their relationship. The reconciliation happened gradually, with appropriate boundaries and realistic expectations. The house's official designation as an LGBTQ historical landmark provided additional protection, While recognizing its significance to Austin's civil rights history, the ceremony brought together city officials, community leaders, and residents whose lives had been touched by Samuel's hospitality and Alex's advocacy. The recognition validated their struggle while inspiring continued activism. Jessica's participation in restorative justice processes allowed her to make amends while maintaining appropriate distance from Alex's daily life. Her real estate expertise, redirected toward affordable housing advocacy, became part of her healing journey. The therapy that addressed her childhood foreclosure-driven trauma helped her understand how fear had driven destructive behavior toward someone who had shown her family nothing but kindness. The Scholarship Fund for Homeless LGBTQ Youth became Alex's way of extending Samuel's legacy beyond property protection to active intervention in young people's lives. The Out Youth Partnership provided infrastructure and expertise, while Alex's fundraising skills, developed through his live stream community, generated sustainable financial support. The program's success attracted national attention to Austin's innovative approaches to LGBTQ housing security. The engagement announcement at the Community Pride celebration felt like the natural culmination of Alex's journey from isolation to belonging. Carlos's proposal in the restored Rainbow Garden, surrounded by chosen family, represented not just personal happiness, but community victory. Their wedding planning included provisions for continuing the house's tradition of hosting celebrations that strengthen bonds between LGBTQ people across generations. The documentary film about Alex's housing rights battle premiered at South by Southwest, bringing international attention to issues affecting LGBTQ people nationwide. The story's combination of personal drama and policy advocacy inspired similar organizing efforts in other cities, while demonstrating how individual courage could create systemic change. Alex's transformation from victim to leader offered hope to countless viewers facing their own battles. But perhaps the most meaningful measure of success was Mason's decision to pursue law school with a focus on LGBTQ elder rights and housing justice. The boy who had been caught between family loyalty and moral conviction grew into a young adult committed to protecting vulnerable community members. His journey from Alex's secret ally to public advocate represented the intergenerational impact of choosing courage over comfort. The lesson woven through Alex's complete journey reminds us that home is both a physical space and an emotional sanctuary that must be actively protected and shared. When we transform personal trauma into community healing, individual victories become collective progress that benefits people we may never meet, but whose struggles mirror our own. What would you do if someone tried to steal not just your home, but your identity and sense of belonging? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if Alex's story moved you, subscribe to Heart Stories for more powerful tales of courage, community, and the fight for what's rightfully ours.